Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View.
And good Sunday morning to you. Welcome into Capitol View. I'm Jay Burr. Well, we just wrapped up the second special session of the 93rd General Assembly. Kind of feels like the 10th, but there was quite a lot of business actually done with the big ticket item being income tax cuts. Here to break us down is Speaker of the House, Matthew Shepard. Boss, we certainly appreciate the time. I know it's been busy. Do you finally get to kind of take a deep breath?
Yeah, it's nice to have wrapped up the special session and now get a little time away, although it's not going to be that much because we'll be back next week for Legislative Council. But, you know, it's nice during the holidays to maybe have a little more time to get back to family and back home.
And not that anybody's counting or anything, but it's about 64 days, give or take, till we're right back at it again with the fiscal. Yeah,
we'll be back in February with the fiscal session, and so there's a lot of work to be done getting ready for that. But I appreciate the membership and how hard they worked during the the course of the last 3 days, and so I think we did some good things for the people of Arkansas.
Now, when it does come to the income tax cuts, I mean, we won't get into kind of the minutia of what it does because I think we've kind of hit that point home. But kind of what went on behind the scenes. I know this wasn't just something that was sort of tossed together here. Be like, oh, hey guys, let's check this out. What do you think? I mean, there was a lot of back and forth, and as you mentioned at the signing, there was a little bit of something brought to the table by all of the parties that were involved.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said yesterday, more than probably any other piece of legislation that I've been a part of over the course of the last 11 years, I think this piece of legislation really has components that were brought from both ends of the Capitol as well as from the governor's office. And so you've got the top-end reductions, probably a little more significant than maybe where we first started. And I think that, as the governor said yesterday, that was something that was I felt like was very important to the House. And then from the Senate end, when you look at smoothing the cliffs, that's something Senator Dismang had really been talking about for the last number of years. And then there's other things in there, whether it's corporate tax reductions, which the governor brought up as we worked through that process, the low-income credit, or another thing is the standard deduction, tying that to the CPI, and that was Representative David Ray that had actually filed that bill back during the session. So it just was a combination of all those things where everybody came together. As I said yesterday, if I wrote the bill and if it was all up to me, it might have looked a little different. Probably the same could be said for Senator Hickey or the governor, but that's the legislative process, that's the political process, and at the end of the day, we were able to deliver the largest income tax cut in the history of the state to the people of Arkansas.
So monumental in that case, but also too, I guess some of the arguments that were made out there, even though this was special session, most things are agreed to, but are people actually going to feel the impact of this more so than maybe kind of reinvent? I know like pre-K was brought up, healthcare, things like that were sort of brought up. I mean, I guess how do you sort of respond to that? And then also too, I know Representative Godfrey even brought up, the low income tax credit, the non-refundable one, as being 16 cents a day. When you kind of look at it in those regards, it makes you kind of scratch your head, but how do you kind of respond to that?
Well, what I can say is that there's about 104,000 Arkansans that will no longer have to pay taxes as a result of this, and that's some that are at the lower end of the scale. We're looking at some numbers earlier. I think in a two-income family making about $42,000, they're going to get about a $474 reduction in their income tax, and so that's significant. And I think that you also can't look at this just in a vacuum. Because you go back to even my first term in the House 11 years ago, I brought a sales tax holiday a bill that a lot of people said, well, that's not substantive tax relief. That's that's only does that benefit families? I think it does. People will say, well, that maybe that's not as significant as some other things, but that's beneficial to families, and so I believe every little bit helps. I think that it is significant. I mean, the fact that the governor made the point yesterday that obviously at the lower end of the scale, you're not paying as much in taxes, so it stands to reason that when you look at it as maybe dollars and cents, it may be less, but as a percentage of what you owe, I think you're going to see the more significant tax cuts are actually, by and large, at the lower end of the income scale. So we delivered, across the board, all Arkansas taxpayers are going to get relief. I think that's a good thing. And, there's many other things, whether we talk about going back to the private option, Arkansas Works, and other things that have been beneficial to those that maybe are, have, with regard to income or not, at the higher levels. And so, again, I think you don't just look at this singularly, you have to look at it as a whole. But even on its own, standing on its own, this is a big deal for all Arkansas taxpayers.
Now, you guys did cover a few other things beyond taxes. I know the other kind of big ticket item is a proposed project out in eastern Arkansas with U.S. Steel. Obviously, the cat kind of got out of the bag. Not a whole lot of details beyond that, but you guys had to kind of do some things to possibly, move that project along.
Yeah, so, AEDC brought us this project, and of course they're the AEDC and Mike Preston, and they're the real professional economic developers for the state, and so they're the ones that really are working on brokering that deal. But they brought us some proposed changes. When you look at it, it's relatively simple changes in terms of creating a new definition for an eligible entity to receive certain tax credits, which we've provided even in the past. I think this may have been kind of the third version of that. We've had great success in the past. And then there is, a transfer of about $50 million that will be utilized for infrastructure upgrades and other things to hopefully allow us to secure that project. But I think one of the things that's really important to keep in mind is before those funds are utilized, and even when you think about $50 million or an annual expense on the credits of $8.8 million a year for 14 years, the only way those items are actually ever spent or utilized is if there's a positive cost-benefit analysis to the state of Arkansas and to Arkansas taxpayers. So I think it's a good thing. I think that that you would love to see a really significant project. This is going to be great for Northeast Arkansas, but not just Northeast Arkansas, but for the whole state of Arkansas. And I think Mike Preston and others have said we're kind of in the driver's seat right now. We're competing with other southern states, and this is just the nature of economic development, particularly when you think about really big projects. These are the things you have to do to be competitive.
And quickly, kind of rolling through some of the other ones, because they're kind of a little more compact. You guys didn't get a whole lot of debate on, but the LLC bill, that was basically just kind of changing some dates in that bill originally, right? Yeah,
by and large, it was just to try and bridge a gap that was inadvertently created. We previously had the Small Business Entity Tax Pass-Through Act, which had been the law in Arkansas to provide for the formation of LLCs. It had been there for a number of years. There's now a uniform law that's been adopted by many states. That's what we adopted in the regular session, but actually the dates, the effective dates and the repeal dates didn't exactly correspond, so there was a bit of a gap there, and so we needed to come back, fix that, and that's one of the things that really precipitated the special session at this point in time, is we need to deal with that sooner than later.
And finally here, the other kind of, I guess, a big ticket item I would say is you're actually repealing something. It was the insulin bill, and I know there was a lot of good intentions, but it didn't seem to work out the way it was intended to.
Well, it certainly was motivated by good intentions, and there would have been some things that would have been, very good to come from that, but there were also some inadvertent effects from that might have worked a hardship on some. And so that bill actually was not set to go into effect until, I believe, January 1st of this coming year. And so we needed to repeal that. We'll go back to the drawing board. As you know, we've been working through with a consultant and others looking at our employee benefits for our teachers and for our state employees. And so we think that there could be an opportunity in the future to maybe revisit that issue, but we needed to go ahead and repeal it so that there wouldn't be any unintended hardship roll around in January. And that was kind of the other bill that when people say, well, why are you in special session in between Thanksgiving and Christmas? Really, the LLC bill and the insulin bill were two things that really need to be addressed sooner than later.
All right, so there you have it here. That's kind of the big ticket items here, but we don't plan on anything else, do we? We're not going to slip in another special session, are we?
Not that I know of. I'm just glad to get through that one.
Got through it in the 3 days that they are constitutionally required of. Matthew Shepard, your Speaker of the House of Representatives. Boss, we certainly appreciate the time. We'll do it again. It's good to have you back in here. I know you always had the groovy Zoom background, but this is all right.
It's good to be here in person. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, here. Well, we kind of break down that tax cuts coming up here. Jeremy Horpedahl from UCA joins us to talk a little taxes. Capitol View coming up. More after this.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back into Capitol View. Well, we've kind of talked a little bit about what happened during the session. Obviously, the state income tax has now been changed up. And here to kind of help us make sense of all this, because it's a lot of numbers and really, what does it mean to guys like you and me? But joining us from UCA is a professor of economics, Jeremy Horpedahl. He's got his mustache back just like I asked for, so I'm excited about that. That's it, see? We have influence here on Capitol View. But it's good to have you back in here, boss. Okay, we've kind of passed these tax cuts now. 4.9% is sort of the golden rate here. But I guess, really, what does this mean to regular Arkansans? I know we've done things like combined tables and all this other stuff, but what does it mean in terms of dollars and cents?
Right. So the lowering of the top rate is one thing that you mentioned. That it was 5.9%. Now they're going to lower it to 4.9 if all the revenue comes in that they want, and they don't have to dip into their reserve fund. That's going to mostly benefit higher income taxpayers. So anytime you lower the top rate, that's what richer people are going to be paying. Sure. But in Arkansas, because of changes made in past years, this now is going to be being some benefit to people in the middle class too. So anyone really over $40,000 is going to see some benefit from the lowering of that top rate to 4.9%. The other thing is the combining of the tables you mentioned. Yeah. And so previously, or currently, this year isn't quite over yet, but we have 3 sets of tax tables in Arkansas. Starting next year, in just a few weeks, they're going to be moving that to 2 tables. What does that mean for people? Well, for those that are in the middle table, so basically between about $20,000 and $80,000 a year, they're going to all their rates lowered to match lower income taxpayers. So everyone in the middle chunk, which is where most people are, they're going to have all their tax rates lowered a little bit. And they're going to see that's where the big benefit for the middle class is going to be, is from combining the tables, which seems like a kind of arcane tax thing. I mean, lowering the rate, we kind of understand that, but combining tables, think of that as lowering rates for people that are right in the middle of the income distribution. And
also, too, that their top tax rate is also that 5.9, also getting dropped in there. So it's not just, hey, the big dogs here are getting their deal rate are lowered. It's kind of everybody at the top rate.
Right, and after these, if all these are completely phased in, that top rate is then going to start at about $23,000. So anyone making over that, which is going to be almost most taxpayers in Arkansas, are now going to be, for most of their income, will be at that top rate of 4.9.
Okay, so we're talking about the top rates here, you know, and obviously too in the combining of tables. So we've talked about this before, but let's kind of do a quick refresher. The tables, the way the tax structure is set up, and this is kind of without digging into the weeds, is we currently have 3 separate tables. There's a lower, a middle, and a higher income, and then those lower and middles are kind of getting combined. I guess, is that where a whole lot of the middle class are really going to see that benefit, is they're going to be paying those lower rates?
Right. That's where, for the middle class, that's the main benefit for them, is their rates are being lowered to match the lower income tables. So now we'll have 2 tables. We'll have now just an upper and an everyone else. So the upper table is those above about $85,000 once it's phased in, and then everyone below 85, they'll all be on the same set of tables, which is how most states do it. We do it in a little more complicated way than most states have. You know, 1 set of tables. They got different rates, but 1 set. We got 3 sets of tables. We're going down to 2, and most people are going to be on now that table that we now call the lower income table. Most people will be on that set of brackets, except for those, like I said, above about 85,000.
Okay, so also too, corporate tax rate. I know that's been a big thing that a lot of the legislators have been kind of kicking around when it comes to trying to create jobs, things of that nature. Kind of the same premise with them, sort of, kind of. Is that right?
That's right. So the corporate tax rate is going to be the tax rate that large corporations pay, publicly traded companies, things like that, who most of those companies don't even have all their business in Arkansas. So we're lowering, or the plan is to lower the rate which is also currently at 5.9, to get that down to 5.3%. So not quite as low as the 4.9, but that's going to mean that any business that sells goods in Arkansas is going to pay a lower tax rate. And the goal there would be to attract some businesses to come here. There are also some businesses that we might think of as, some family farms are actually going to pay under this tax rate. But for most businesses, actually, what they're going to pay is those, what we call the individual income tax rates. Most small businesses are actually paying on the one that we think of as the ones that we pay.
Right.
Businesses that are sole proprietorships and partnerships, they actually pay, they don't even pay that corporate rate. They pay through the rates that we pay. So that corporate rate, lowering that is going to affect large corporations, mostly publicly traded, so regardless of where they're based, right? So here's the other thing that they talk about a little bit in the debates in the legislature is this will benefit some foreign corporations too, right? So anyone that sells things in Arkansas pays some corporate tax to Arkansas. Whether you're Walmart, who's based here, or you're Target, who's based in Minneapolis, you're going to pay income tax based on how much stuff you sell in Arkansas.
Right.
And so for all those businesses that sell things here, we're going to be lowering the rate of income tax that those types of businesses pay.
Now, what kind of advantage will this give? I mean, even kind of taken away from the corporate thing, because, corporate guys, I mean, we're talking billions of dollars, so kind of drops in the bucket. But you mentioned, like, small businesses paying some more of those personal income levels, dropping that a full percent. I would imagine for a small business here in the state, somewhat significant.
That's right. So for what we might call small businesses, or technically we call them pass-through, because the income passes through to the owners rather than the business paying it, they're going to see their rate lowered by, once this is phased in, a full percentage point, which is going to be a pretty big reduction, since most of their income is going to be paying that higher rate.
Right.
So it can be a really big benefit, and I think what many legislators that voted for this were thinking is that for businesses that are a small business that's thinking about where should I locate, there's lots of things they consider, right?
Yeah.
But if they're thinking about should I locate on the Arkansas side of the border or the Tennessee side of the border, if the rate is lowered here, that makes it slightly more attractive to come here. So that's the goal, is for no one's going to move just because of taxes, right?
Sure,
no business or no person will move just because of taxes. But a lot of businesses and some higher income individuals are going to have a choice of where they want to locate, because they are considering to be in some general area, right?
Right.
They might want to be on the Texarkana or Arkansas or Texas side of the border. Although Texarkana, Arkansas, they have a nice exemption from the income tax entirely if you live in Texarkana. It'd be nice to have for others, but
ain't that the truth?
But they've had that since the 1970s,
right?
Which, just to give a little bit of history, the 1970s was the last time we raised the income tax rate in Arkansas.
Hey.
So to give you the full history here, it doesn't actually take long, the full history.
Oh, there you go. All
90 years of history, the income tax, pretty quick. It was set up in 1929. Top rate was 5%. Never touched again until the 70s. They raised it to 7%. Never touched again until the Hutchinson administration, and now they're lowering it right down to about where it started at 5%.
So there you have
So 5 up to 7, and now back down to 4.9. So that's the whole history of it.
Hey, there you go. Just in a nutshell. We give you history here. And I guess finally, too, you kind of touched on it, but does this, I know that during the debate, a lot of it was we're making Arkansas more competitive. Obviously, they're comparing Arkansas to Texas, kind of an apples and oranges if you ask me. But does this, in the big scheme of things, make Arkansas more competitive, or are these just kind of nice talking points in sort of the debate of making this decision?
Right. I would say it does make us more competitive in certain situations, right?
Okay.
So for businesses that they're considering different locations. And we do this with these targeted incentives sometimes, right?
Yeah.
We try to attract a business, say, hey, if you come to Arkansas, we'll give you a break and you won't have to pay income or sales or property tax or something for a few years, right? This is a way of saying to all businesses, we're not going to give any special favors here. Just if you want to come to Arkansas, we're going to keep our rates competitive with our neighbors. I think you're right that Texas, hard to compete with that. It's a little bit different. But when you look at Louisiana or Mississippi or Missouri, right, we're trying to keep up with those states where they do have a corporate tax, they do have a personal income tax, but they've been lowering theirs. So when they say we're trying to be competitive, is that we don't want to be too much out of line with everyone else, right? If we had still been at 7%, where now all our neighbors are below 5%, for a business deciding where to locate, that maybe makes Arkansas look a little less attractive. But as long as we're kind of keeping up with them, that's the competitive part of it.
All right, so there you have it here. You get a history lesson, plus you know what's going on now. We took a very complex 26-page bill, crammed it in here to about 8 minutes or so. So hopefully you picked up what Jeremy Horpedahl has been putting down here. Boss, we always appreciate it. I know I came away knowing what's actually going on now, and that's really the name of the game here.
I always have to be here, Jay. Thanks for inviting me.
the stash, it's back, and we appreciate it. Well, when we come back, Bob Dole passed away this past week, and he was able to bring Democrats and Republicans together to honor his legacy. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back to Capitol View. Former Republican Senator Bob Dole is lying in state at the U.S. Capitol last week. Dole, who served nearly 36 years in Congress, died on Sunday at the age of 98 after he announced a diagnosis of stage 4 lung cancer earlier this year. Our Washington correspondent Jesse Tenur has more.
Bob belongs here. He, too, was a giant of our history.
President Biden paid tribute to his longtime friend and colleague, Kansas Republican Bob Dole, surrounded by images of other American heroes in the Capitol Rotunda.
May we follow his wisdom and his timeless truth and reach consensus on the basic fundamental principles we all agree on.
Dole began his congressional career in the House. Speaker Nancy Pelosi noted this was his second time being honored in the Rotunda. The first was in 2018, when he received Congress's highest honor, the Congressional Gold Medal.
Honoring his duty, he always talked about his duty to our nation with courage, dignity, and integrity.
Dole then served for decades in the Senate, where Republican leader Mitch McConnell said the World War II veteran reached across the aisle to pass landmark legislation, like the Americans with Disabilities Act.
A wounded warrior who spent decades carrying fellow veterans and Americans with disabilities on his shoulders.
Dole was the last of the greatest generation to run for president. Though he never won the White House, its current occupant placed Dole among those who have.
America has lost one of our greatest patriots.
The Supreme Court on Friday allowed a Texas law banning most abortions in place, but did rule clinics can sue the state. Now, this decision comes after a Texas high court judge ruled the law enforcement portions of the law unconstitutional, but the court voted 8-1 to allow the lawsuit against the ban to continue. The Texas law allows for citizens to enforce the laws and allows lawsuits against clinics, doctors, and anyone who aids or abets an abortion performed after a heartbeat is detected. A study published by the University of Texas found the number of abortions in Texas has fallen by 50% in the first month of the law being in place. The court also dismissed a lawsuit filed by the Justice Department on this matter as well. So that one's going to be one to certainly track. And we're back to wrap it up after this. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Clean desk, clean show. That is it for this week. I want to thank House Speaker Matthew Shepard and also good friend of the show, Jeremy Horpedahl. Make sure you come back right here next week. We'll have an all-new Capitol View. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.